Welcome in the Vikings Now. I am your host for today's show, which we will be going over the Vikings free agency tracker, just kind of seeing where all the signings that the Vikings have made, going over the contract details. I'll be giving you my thoughts on all of those. Then also breaking news today as the Philadelphia Eagles just cut Darius Slay. I am self-producing this video for you guys, so bear with me if I'm moving a little slow, graphic to graphic. Hey, if you guys want a reason to subscribe, you guys subscribe. It'll maybe help me get a producer in the future. But anyways, let's dive into it. And I do want to give a shout out before I dive into the kind of rest of the news on today's show. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I have felt like he has done a great job so far during NFL free agency of getting guys that fit his coaches and fit the coach's scheme. You look at like Marcus Davenport, Byron Murphy, just defensively, very versatile, aggressive defenders. I just think he's doing a great job. And also we'll dive into Josh Oliver here in a little bit. Josh Oliver, the 12 personnel the Vikings are going to run, it's going to be great. Kevin O'Connell will be able to hop in his bag a ton in 12 personnel, and that's what he likes to do. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, we know that Sean McVay tree is obsessed with that little 12 personnel, the 2 tight end sets. So that's going to be diving into on today's video. We're going to be looking over all the Minnesota Vikings moves and more. And let's start off with Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy was the big-time signing yesterday, and he actually tweeted out earlier this morning something pretty damn cool here. He said, "Good morning, Minnesota. Can't wait to get to work." This fires me up. I mean, Byron Murphy, he is a Minnesota Viking, and I whipped up together a projected Vikings depth chart for you guys because this room right now, honestly, is not looking as bad as I thought. You look at it right now. Byron Murphy, expect him to be CB1 for the Minnesota Vikings. Duke Shelley, he may return. He is still a free agent. I am honestly shocked the Vikes have not signed him yet, but we will see. And then obviously Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, not the second-year players. But overall, I think this was a huge pickup for the Vikings. I think the Vikings, they needed cornerback help, and that's exactly what they got. I mean, Byron Murphy, yes, he struggled in his 2020 season, but in 2021, when he was healthy for those first 9 games, I believe, he was fantastic. And I think he's going to be a huge help to a huge need for the Minnesota Vikings. And, hey, I think the Vikings are doing a great job so far in free agency. And if you're happy with the way the Vikings have been running free agency and with what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has pulled off so far, just give me a like on this video. I expect to see at least 150 likes. Go down there, show some support for Kwesi, show some support on the channel. It's free, and like today's video. And then the second signing that the Vikings have, which I have really changed my tune on this, and that was signing Josh Oliver. Josh Oliver, he is the blocking tight end from the Baltimore Ravens, and I was questioning this because I was like, this was the first move the Vikings made, and I kind of said, that's what we're doing with all of our kind of limited cap space and our limited just, I guess, assets heading into this free agency, but I love it. And if you're looking at the Vikings depth chart right now, I mean, could you imagine just having TJ Hockenson and Josh Oliver on the field at the same time, what Kevin O'Connell is going to be able to call out of that 12 personnel? And this is what the Vikings 12 personnel should look like going into next year. Obviously, you got the top dog, Justin Jefferson, and then you got KJ Osborne, who's set to be the wide receiver 2 right now, unless the Vikings make another move. Still have Dalvin Cook on the roster. We will see if he makes it. And then obviously TJ Hockenson and Josh Oliver, I mean, that is an elite duo to have at tight end and to be able to hop into those 12 personnel groupings. And like I was mentioning earlier, Kevin O'Connell, he loves 12 personnel. This is Kevin O'Connell really hopping in his bag and kind of, like, this is where he's most comfortable. You know, as play callers in the NFL, you always have those couple personnel groupings that you just love more than others. And for McVay and Kevin O'Connell and everybody coming from that tree, it is 12 personnel. And I think Kevin O'Connell, he's going to have a ton of fun calling plays, really hopping in his bag with both of them, because you really aren't going to be able to tell, play action or not, what the Vikings are going to do, because you do have such a pass-catching threat in TJ Hockenson. And now with Josh Oliver being such a phenomenal run blocker at the tight end position, I'm just curious to see how this is going to turn out for the Minnesota Vikings. But out of the 3 signings so far, I'll hop into the Marcus Davenport one here in a second. Out of Josh Oliver, Byron Murphy, and Marcus Davenport, who has been your favorite signing so far? Honestly, I think the most common answer here will be Byron Murphy, but hey, I mean, that Josh Oliver, Marcus Davenport signing, don't sleep on those two, because those are some big-time moves for the Minnesota Vikings, and they're going to be high-impact players for next season. Jumping in here, Marcus Davenport was the second signing that broke last night. Man, this signing excites me a lot. He's got tremendous upside. And last season, yes, he only had half a sack. If you look at that, but he was suspended for 6 games. He's had the injury history in the past. But, man, this dude, when you throw on his tape, he just pops off the screen. Just absolutely pops off the screen for the Minnesota Vikings. And, honestly, the biggest thing with Marcus Davenport is that upside. I mean, he was the 14th overall pick in the 2018 draft. And I feel like this is a signing that you could really take. You could take a negative or you could take a positive look on it. If you want to be negative, you could say, hey, he's got an injury history. He hasn't been the most productive in the NFL. You know, really work out in Minnesota. You're giving him a lot of money. But if you want to take the positive outlook on this whole thing, you could just be like, hey, he's a guy with tremendous upside. We only got him on a 1-year deal. We can see if he kind of lives up to that first-round potential. And if he does, you could re-sign him for the next 3 to 4 years, and you have yourself a stud edge rusher in Minnesota. Wasn't going to leave off these guys. Got to show love to the special teams group. The All-Pro, Andrew Depaola. He is back with the Minnesota Vikings, the long snapper, signing the biggest contract for a long snapper in NFL history with 3 years, $4.02 million. That one kind of just got me fired up, I'm not going to lie. I mean, seeing Andrew Depaola getting that money, I love long snappers. I love the special teams guys. And also Greg Joseph, re-signing him for a 2-year, $2.5 million deal, and he's also got a ton of incentives that are based off field goal percentage. So Greg Joseph, Andrew Depaola, kicking all squared away heading into next season. Now, before we hop into this Darius Slay rumor, because he had some very interesting comments about the Minnesota Vikings, who do you want the Vikings to sign next? And I'll challenge you guys. You're not allowed to say Darius Slay. That's what we're going to be talking about here. Give me another free agent signing besides Darius Slay that you want the Vikings to sign. But now let's talk about it. Should the Minnesota Vikings sign Darius Slay in 2023 NFL free agency? My initial response is hell yeah. Hell yeah, I want the Vikings to bring in Darius Slay. I mean, why would you not? He is a great corner. He had a great year for the Vikings last season. And this is actually what he had to say on the Minnesota Vikings. Said, I actually love the horn, talking about the gal horn that's blown at the beginning of each game. Said, I love when they say skull. See, that is gangsta. I love that. They by far have the best stadium in the NFL. Tell me those words don't fire me up. Those are actually from 2019, by the way, but, you know, he still loves Minnesota. I think it's a possibility, and could you imagine this cornerback depth chart if you were to add Darius Slay? I mean, obviously you could go with Darius Slay, CB1, or Byron Murphy. Doesn't really matter to me. But pairing him up with a guy like Andrew Booth Jr., and then you have guys like a Caleb Evans. I mean, this cornerback group for the Minnesota Vikings could really be elite. And then I still think guys like Chris Boyd, Shannon Sullivan, 2 free agents that don't expect to get a lot on the market. If you don't get Darius Slay, and you do have to roll out Murphy, Booth, and Evans as your top 3, honestly, Shannon Sullivan being kind of your backup nickel, and then Chris Boyd just kind of being a special teams guy, and then a backup corner for you, honestly, I don't think is the worst thing in the world. But overall, this cornerback room would be elite. If you add in Darius Slay, I honestly think the Vikings should rule out drafting a corner in next year's draft. I just personally think they just wouldn't need to. I mean, if you would have Darius Slay and Byron Murphy and then still have those 2 young guns in Booth and a Caleb Evans, I mean, this secondary, I mean, you are a move away from having one of the better secondaries in the NFL. I mean, if you go out and you go get Darius Slay, pair him up with what Lewis Seen and Harrison Smith are going to do on the back end, I mean, the Vikings cornerback room, you could be looking around and you could be like, damn, this is a top 5 unit in the NFL. And I will want to end on this because I'm very excited about this defense. I just think Brian Flores and kind of the roster construction that's going on right now, this defense is going to flip on its head. And I think this Vikings defense actually has a chance to be very special next year. I'm not even just talking mediocre. I think this Vikings defensive group has a chance to be top 10, top 12 in the NFL. And why I think that? The second-year guys. Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, Brian Asamoah, and Lewis Seen. Those 4 guys, if they kind of take that next step up and match up with guys already on the roster like a Byron Murphy, like a Harrison Smith, like a Danielle Hunter, like a Marcus Davenport, the Vikings defense could be special. And I'm extremely excited about it. And this offseason, shout out to Kwesi because he has made this a lot more enjoyable than honestly I thought it was going to be. But if you guys made it to the end of the video, you guys are an absolute real one. I love getting in the comments and seeing all the real ones in there. It's kind of tell to me is who's watching all the way to the end. So if you made it to the end of the video, give me a real one down in the comments below. As always, Skol Vikes.